I went to Gurdwara recently. There are no more any pictures of Guru Nanak or any of the gurus. It has become the book. The book is God. Its teachings are the God. And so on. People are moving away from it, but at the same token, Hindu gods are just so interesting.
I have to say, I also went to an Arangetram this past weekend, which is a dance recital for people who do Bharatnatyam. It's a very big deal. But the one thing I liked about the show was that they took the time to explain in English what the movements and what the pieces were about, so that the young audience could actually relate to it. It wasn't just a sequence of movements on the stage. People actually understood the storyline. So we should do more of those kinds of things, expecting that the audience is mixed audience, not just always an Indian audience.
It's a graduation ceremony. That's what it's called, Arangetram. Moving on, folks. Obesity is in China. 40% of the population of China has actually gotten fat because they're now eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, and so on and so forth. In the, they have what, 1.3 billion population?
They're a little bit bigger than us.
Only 3 million people exercise in gyms. They have now gyms. And Bali Fitness is there.
Bali was...
Weight Watchers is there. In fact, Weight Watchers have 3 units up there, and they are making sure that the Chinese slim down. It's a phenomena that anywhere these fast foods go, even in India now, the obesity is on the rise. I don't know what is in that stuff, even though the food is probably made in that country. What is in it that everybody becomes obese?
Well, I think, one, it's peer pressure, because people like to eat out and they have money. And so if you're eating out, then there's an expectation when you get together to always go and eat out. People aren't eating at each other's homes anymore, the way that India was always used to, their Indian hospitality. You come over, you have tea, you have, you know, dinner. Now the yuppies are going out to eat, just like we do here. So eating has become a social phenomenon, the way that it never was in India. Or Indian food in general was vegetarian and it was healthier. Now you're seeing a lot of these fast food chains show up with their bad habits. And let's face it, people in India are becoming workaholics too. They live busy lives. They have all the same problems we have here. And people just aren't living mobile lives anymore. They're very sedentary. And they're watching TV. And there's MTV. And there's all kinds of other distractions. So I'm not surprised. It's scary how quickly the population is already changing to evidence those same kinds of problems. In fact, it was a good article because while we embrace a lot of Eastern philosophies into our daily world, they're embracing Western ones, and they're paying the price quickly within 20 years of embracing those Western philosophies.
This happened in 6 years. They went from 30% to 40%. I mean, that's a huge jump in obesity. In the end, you can say the policy of China, 1 child per couple, that plays a big role in it because, you know, first child, you always pamper them, give them everything, and that's the result.
Unfortunately, it is. And, you know, it's a controversial policy. India has not adopted this policy, but we're not immune to the problem, right? Yeah. In some ways, I think peer pressure between children in the same family can also contribute. So I think that's probably to blame in large part, but not totally. At the end of the day, you know, the trade-offs of globalization is that we inherit each other's baggage, and that's what we're doing.
Blame it on globalization.
Blame it on globalization. 2 quick stories coming out of India. One is India's inflation. Many of us living here are feeling the effects of the economy, but people in India are also feeling the effects of the economy, even though India did not go through a big formal recession. But May numbers show that the inflation in India has actually risen to 10.2%. In fact,
wow.
Food inflation, this is a scary number, food inflation remained a stubbornly high 16.5%. And fuel and power inflation came in at 13.1%. At the end of the day, living life in India is becoming expensive, especially if you're in the cities, because resources are just tapped highly, and getting fuel and food, your basic necessities, are becoming very, very expensive in India. You know,
President Reagan used to say inflation is the worst penalty on seniors.
On seniors, it's also a penalty on a nation that's trying to improve its infrastructure. Iron and steel prices were 20% higher in May than a year ago. And you know what I kept thinking of is all the infrastructure projects that are happening in Delhi right now in preparation for the World Games that are coming in November.
Games, yeah.
Commonwealth Games. I mean, this is the wrong time for India to be going through this kind of crisis. But another interesting article on India's population had me intrigued because, you know, we just went through the census.
They're going through their census.
They're going through their census. But, you know, just like we care about our populations, you know, what's the ethnic breakdown, demographic breakdown, in India they're doing the same thing, but in regards to castes. You know, there's a caste system in India.
They're counting poor people.
They're counting poor people, but remember, in India there is a stratified demographic structure, if you will, known as the caste system. I'm not personally very proud of the caste system, but there is a reason and function that it works in India because it creates economic diversity. People live within their caste. They have certain types of jobs because they're in those castes, and the whole system somehow works. So it's lasted, even though, you know, we can bristle at what it, you know,
India
does.
will dispute with you on that. Ambassador will dispute with you on that.
But, you know, there's no clear answer to exactly how to do this kind of a census exercise in India. And so what they're trying to do is actually find people with certain economic functions as a way to count them, which I thought is very interesting. So if you want to try to count your population, go find all the plumbers, because the plumbers are all likely to be of this one caste. For example, I'm just citing one loose example here, but that's how people in India actually go about trying to collect numbers on populations, which is such a different mechanism than we try to do here. I just thought it was very interesting, the parallels you can draw from doing the same kind of exercise overseas in India versus here in the United States.
You know, but they're also trying to count how many poor people they have so that they can direct the government policy towards them. There's a lot of good, but it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 months for all the count to be in, just like we have it here.
Just like we have here. I mean, the challenge is still the same for the government, which is to find programs and to funnel the money, the investment money, back out to the populations. But it's such a different way of doing it than we would do here.
Folks, here's a great story about why and how people go in business. You know, this Harvard School graduate, his mother got cancer, so she had to go to Memorial Sloan Hospital in New York. And she was pretty well taken care of. She had a very nice hospital bed, and she was very impressed. And then she moved to India because she wanted to go stay there. Up there, she said the treatment that she received was just equal, but the beds in India were so uncomfortable. Now, remember, in the United States, there are 60 beds per 10,000 people. In India, there are only 8 beds to 10,000 people.
Wow.
That means they will need so many beds. You know, they only can produce, what, 8,000 beds a year? They will need 40 years to produce the beds.
Just to catch up.
So this guy, he got an idea, and he actually put it up to Harvard Business School, and he won the first prize of $25,000. He joined Toyota Motor Company and got the idea from them.